Everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here. Welcome to another episode of UnWoke Academy. Today is Friday, November 17th, and let's dive into AI a little bit. It's all the latest craze and everyone's talking about it. And is it possible? It's a critical key point to be asking right now at this juncture. Is it possible that AI factors into all of this stuff that we're talking about from the woke left? That we've got the sudden appearance of all these things like ESG, DEI, CBDC, and CEI, and all that stuff. So suddenly, the public is just majorly aware of all of these things, and they have kind of asserted themselves in really every aspect of life: commerce, business development, banking, credit and lending, investments, finance, international exchange, all of that stuff. Suddenly, there are all these tentacles of what I call leftism, globalism, leftism, whatever you want to call it. But they've shown up, and all of a sudden, the people of the world, we the people in the global community, like, what in the heck? What do we make of all this? So we talk a lot about ESG and where it comes from, what it represents. Everything about UnWoke is completely opposed to it. It is an opaque, manipulative tool that is designed, I absolutely assert, to maintain and create artificial control over business, finance, money, currency, and policy. So one of the ways that I have of describing the ESG thing is I call it a backdoor way of sneaking in the Green New Deal into every aspect of our lives, and finance in particular. But let's not lose sight of the fact that AI has shown up in full force everywhere, in like everything, kind of all at once. And when you're talking about, let's see if we can connect a couple of dots here in a meaningful way so we can start to dissect intention and where things might go wrong. The ESG thing, and I want to clarify or define rather for anybody that doesn't understand these terms as I throw them around. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And it is kind of exactly the opposite of transparent, open, free markets. It's this world where somebody gets to subjectively define things like equity and inclusion and all that stuff. So it's hard. I think by design, it's hard to push back against those things because um, the instinct is, well, when you're talking about equity and things should be equitable, and what about fairness and all that stuff, and it's hard to very publicly argue against that, but I do, and here's why. It's not out of an interest in unfairness. I'd love for everything to be fair and reasonable and have as much opportunity for growth and individual personal development, etc., as possible. It's really simply for the fact that those things are not actually clearly defined by the very people who are perpetrating that upon society. So the continued opaque nature of ESG, environmental, social, and governance, and even things like DEI, which stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're now actually seeing in the DEI realm, which factors into ESG actually. That's the social piece of environmental, social, and governance. But in the DEI realm, we're seeing exactly the opposite. We're seeing racial profiling in a lot of it, and it's getting violent. People are categorizing each other. It's really, instead of being this sort of a panacea of fairness to the world, it's actually turned into exactly the opposite. It's a really violent identity politics. And that should have no place in the financial world, but it's asserting itself. So we're navigating all of these things, and I'm discussing how to find it and where to find it and how to avoid it. And we've got all these great resources available to you and I think hopefully you're following it by now. We have acquired key major components of an organization called Second Vote. They're a spectacular group of people that for 12 years has been tracking and monitoring this stuff. They've been evaluating companies, both public and private, on the 6 pillars of freedom. You can go to the website right now. It's secondvote.com and look up. You can see details on how it's expressed and how they rank and rate them and those 6 pillars of freedom. By the way, I mentioned it is November 17th. That website, secondvote.com, I believe is just going to stay up through the end of the year. That group has closed. We have acquired their data set, analytics, and intellectual property, and are going to pick up that ball and run with it. We're going to do a lot more in the analytics, the research, development, and reporting on companies so that we can parse out and understand where the woke left are, where the middle of the road, non-political, what I call shareholder first, are, and where the right, conservative, right-leaning types of investments are. And thankfully, in the right-leaning, those are actually clear and transparent. You can see them, and we can track them and report on them. Those are going to be your investments. They're not for everybody, but for anybody who is believes in Judeo-Christian values, who is, for instance, pro-life or pro-Second Amendment, believes in police and our borders and border security, all those kinds of things. Just a belief in Judeo-Christian values, they may fit there. So by reporting on all 3 of those, we can start to spotlight the, I'm just going to call it malfeasance, the opaque nature of the stuff that's on the far left. You really can't, in spite of all the talk and rhetoric around how great that stuff is, you can't actually define it. Side note on that, there are some really major lawsuits that are coming out that are spectacular that you need to be watching. And I really hope that they go through the courts, that there are some good outcomes and conclusions drawn by the courts, and that lots more of these lawsuits come up. And that is the American Airlines Pilots Union and the New York Public Workers Union. I believe that's the name of it. You can do some searches, but both of those groups are suing the people that manage their workplace retirement plan for malfeasance, for having put their money into the ESG stuff. So we've got this environment where ESG is really pushing hard with lots of money, literally and also figuratively, in the form of trying to capture your money into all these far left woke companies and causes. At the same time, we have something called CBDC, it stands for Centralized Banking Digital Currency. Centralized Banking Digital Currency is arguably the most awful, nefarious concept to hit the planet in many, many decades. What it represents is complete government control over everyone. Your life, your money, your ability to spend, your ability to collect money, what you can buy, when you can buy it, and where you can buy it. So, and by where, I know it's sort of a complex thing, but this is bad stuff that some really bad people have been thinking on and developing and brewing for years in some sort of evil cauldron somewhere. But the idea of these 15-minute cities and smartphones, and smartphone being connected to the internet and GPS, and then facial recognition and all that. So the concept that you really are not supposed to travel outside of this small confined area can be attached to your money and where and when you can spend it. And another piece of the frightening nature of centralized banking digital currency is the idea that currency might expire. So if you get some sort of refund on taxes, which is actually somebody else's taxes or your taxes that are given back to you in a small increment at some time later after the government has gotten their fangs into it. There can, with centralized banking digital currency, or CBDC for short, there can be an expiration date on that money. How frightening is that? So there's like, well, here's $1,000. You can spend it only within this range of your apartment or wherever you're put, and you can't spend it outside of that, or there's a penalty, and you must spend it within the next 30 days. That's a hint of what CBDC represents. So we've got this environment swirling around with all this bad stuff, and we've got some global and in the US federal entities and people trying to implement this stuff. They're trying to foist it upon us, bring it into our lives. Now let's add AI. AI has shown up, and it's basically it's supposed to be kind of everything. AI is going to help you track and manage your phone calls and your text messages and your emails and your work schedule and in your everything. Well, I saw I was surprised to find, and I took a screen capture here. Let me look at it. I found an email from Brave. Now, Brave is the browser that I happen to use, and I like Brave. I like them a lot. I like what they stand for and what they represent, and they do lots of things that really revolves around privacy. So lo and behold, I was really surprised to find Brave advocating not just for the use of AI, which is, don't get me wrong, there's nothing inherently immediately wrong with AI, but we need to be very cautious about suddenly just swinging the door wide open and having AI do everything and giving AI the artificial intelligence, basically, to give AI access to everything that we're doing and how we're conducting ourselves, where we are, when. That allows a massive database of our movements, our objectives, our likes and dislikes, our business plans, our partnerships, everything. It puts it all out in public display. Now we're adding finance. This really startled me, and I plan to do more digging and research. There's connected with Brave, the browser and search engine. They're doing a rollout of something called they're calling it the golden age of CFO technology, and there's a sort of a podcast. It's actually just audio. There's an audio release from the Brave technologist that pertains to the use of AI in finance. So we saw a while ago, and I actually ended up kind of inadvertently doing a big deep dive into artificial intelligence and these sort of bot algorithms that manage investments. To my horror and non-surprise, I guess I'll say, I discovered that a lot of these were effectively the same thing. They're sort of this flashy idea of a big computer that maybe is supposed to know more than humans, that is corralling and directing investments for people. So pretty much everybody out there over the last like however many years has rolled out this AI, this bot-driven investing. But not at all to my surprise, I found that these places are overwhelmingly just simply steering people into the same investments they're getting everywhere else. And they overwhelmingly tend to be into far left, woke managers, companies, and causes. Not good. Not at all happy about that. So it's kind of putting this veneer of computer-driven algorithms and all that stuff and you've probably seen those commercials where they have these cool charts and they're like, this bot algorithm thing can really can figure out the markets and you're going to get ahead and everything. Well, at the end of the day, not really getting ahead. And what it's doing is just putting you into the same box as everybody else with the same investments at the same time. So this this email, it pertains to a Grant Halloran, who is CEO of Planful, and he discusses the AI's impact on CFOs and finance leaders and ways these technologies have changed their roles within organizations. I'm reading the email release. He also shares how the financial industry will witness a future where extensive human involvement in routine financial tasks is reduced in favor of focusing on high value strategic work. Ooh, doesn't that sound good? Isn't that great? We're going to be able to lead these luxurious, relaxing lifestyles if we turn over the administration of those boring, mundane financial tasks to an AI computer. Not so fast. I'm not on board with this. I ended up, let me switch over to this other screen. So I looked up the, let's see, somewhere in here, I've got a description of this Grant Halloran. Grant Halloran has been around Silicon Valley and tech builds and stuff for a long time. And he seems really good at building globalist stuff. I'm just going to put it that way. I think what I'll probably try to do is in the show notes, I will try to grab some of the resources. I'm just beginning to dive into Grant Halloran. But coming from Brave, I'm really unpleasantly surprised to see this reference to and the beginnings of encouragement for people to take their eye off of their financial security and the integrity and independence of their financial lives. Not good. So I really truly believe that there may be some place for AI to do good things for we the people. My only true dive into it recently came at the hands of a good friend of mine who's kind of a tech guy. He knows way more than I ever will about computers and technology, and he's all excited because there's this huge project I was working on, and I was asking for volunteers to help crunch numbers and build these databases and all that stuff and analyze things. That just so there's no lingering question, that actually was not in the realm of finance. That was in another activity that I'm involved with in fighting for education in K through 12. But I put these feelers out there and said, hey, people, will you please step in and help me? If you understand spreadsheets and their creation, I can walk you through some quick instruction. And he responded pretty quickly, hey, maybe AI can do that for you. Here's the rub. He came in, was like, doop, doop, doop. He typed some things in on my computer and set us up. He switched seats and said, okay, now sit down and you're going to log into this AI thing yourself and you can utilize it. And here's what it will and will not do. And there's like free versions and then paid versions. And so in order to be able to even gain access to the thing, I had to give this AI deal huge amounts of info about myself. I had to enter my mobile number and give like location and an email address and all this stuff. So it's not just like, hey, here's this free thing that the public might find value in. It's we need to identify you and know you, and we're going to geoposition and locate you and where you are and all that stuff. I'm not entirely comfortable with that. But then it got worse. I got into the AI thing and was typing in some questions just to see what it does and how it interacts and how you're able to take things and then refine and get different and better answers or more refined answers to questions you might have. And I started asking questions about real life. The answers from this AI thing were super far left, ultra woke, way, way liberal. And this friend of mine, he sort of shrugged and was like, well, yeah, I know it's, the AI things are built by people who are way left, ultra liberal. Um, and then in my mind, I'm sort of connecting dots. So everything that we're seeing from Silicon Valley, from these sort of globalist minded people, especially the people that work in commerce and finance, growth and business development and banking and credit and lending and all that stuff, tends to be um, very anti-American. I covered those people who were talking about how they would not even consider investing in American companies or European companies that were focused on the cheap slash slave labor of China and places like it. And those people seem very enamored with communism and cheapest everything. So if we're talking about and putting our faith in these AI and the people that design and develop them, and everything that we see is super far left. By the way, a little side note hint here, that's an opportunity for you real, reasonable, sane people out there who are not anti-American, anti-capitalist, um, and are not drinking the woke Kool-Aid to build another AI. I'm not aware of one that actually just focuses on truth, not trying to steer everybody into the communist corner, um, and anti-American, anti-Western values, anti-religion, anti-everything. Uh, so connecting those dots, as I often spend a lot of time doing in looking at what's coming out, where it's coming from, who's behind it, and what kind of money is being poured into it, from where. If we have an environment where we've got a push toward centralized banking digital currency, which is federalized, centralized control over our money, where we can use it, when it might expire, what we're allowed to buy, all those sorts of things. And then we add in all of this push for social credit system, and we're seeing that. We saw California Governor Gavin Newsom go to China, and then China come back and spend some time here, and he has openly said that he seems to envy the control and power of the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party. Same thing with Justin Trudeau in Canada. Very similar comments and very similar trajectory. Then if we add in this idea that we're going to start feeding everything about our lives, and specifically on this thing from Brave, everything about our financial lives, and we're just going to feed it into the system and let it go into some server somewhere and get collected as data points, that does not bode well. That is a real problem. So I am including, all right, let me put it this way. I'm fighting in opposition to ESG, CBDC, CEI. I didn't really get into that much in this discussion. That stands for Corporate Equity Index. That's the club with which billionaire globalists use to beat up on corporations to force them into compliance with their wishes. Sometimes in doing self-harm to the company and their brand. But I'm adding a big red circle and a question mark around AI. I encourage you to do the same. Do not jump both feet and full bodied into this whole AI thing until we know more, and how and if and when and exactly by whom it intersects with all of these other things like centralized banking digital currency and who's collecting the data and all those sorts of things. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of UnWoke.Academy. My name is Jonathan Broadbent. Stay tuned for the next exciting installment.